Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to our Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity series focusing in on workplace mental health. As you all know by now, there is a Q&A box on your screen you can submit questions to at any time throughout our presentation today, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. And I know you all have by now, but I always ask, if you haven't already, please go to michigan.gov/workplace mental health, sign up for our emails that you make sure you get all these invites. You don't have to forward them around. That's also where our December report was posted, as well as our original report, links to these webinars, links to other resources. And we continue to focus in on those three pillars being things that are happening in the workplace, things that are affecting the workplace, and individual behavioral health supports. And this series is really focused on a couple of those, but a lot of it's around those things affecting the workplace, those experiences that we have that we carry with us. And we're definitely full steam ahead in the what can we do about it phase of our work. As you heard in November, we launched some LEADS program work, some education that we can use for interventions in the workplace to help both the employees and the employers kind of get their heads around this and find tools that really work to make a real different impact in the workplace. That December report, if you hadn't had a chance to get through it yet, really focuses in deeper on the impacts of stress on our bodies. So we talk about it a lot with brain science and sort of chronic stress and anxiety and depression being prevalent outcomes and health complications that come from chronic stress. But that report really gets deep in there on what it is doing in all parts of your body and how important it is to keep ourselves focused in on that. So joining us for part two today, again, is our great friend, Vicki Coitz, who is the Director of Trauma and Resilience at work with the Corporation for a Skilled Workforce. She's a recognized expert in this field, a great friend to me and a great friend to our work that we've been doing here. And in January, Vicki covered how toxic stress and trauma affect us at work. And today we're following up with strengthening our own regulation and resilience for ourselves and colleagues. And we'll wrap in March with a more organizational focus. So over to you, Vicki.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. So excited to be back with everybody and talking about the what to do about stress and trauma in the workplace for ourselves and for our colleagues. Okay, so just for anybody who was not able to join us last time, CSW is a national nonprofit organization based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we envision a society in which every person is able to earn a family-sustaining income, achieve upward mobility, and adapt to the future. We work with companies and workforce development organizations and higher education institutions across the country. We've got 5 teams, and the Trauma and Resilience at Work team is one of them. So that's who we are. To be trauma informed, I like to show people where we're going, even in very short presentations. So today's agenda is we're going to spend just a few minutes naming our stressors because we've got a lot of stress, folks, and we want to acknowledge that. I don't want to stress you out anymore, but we do want to acknowledge it. We'll do a very, very quick recap of how stress and trauma affect us. That was the whole presentation in January. So if you need more information or want to delve into that a little bit more, check out the recording of that presentation. And then finally, we'll look at the brain science of managing stress and building resilience and some ways of doing that and practices. So we've got a lot of stressors. So this is from a American Psychological Association 2024 report. It was actually based on 2021 Gallup poll data. So I imagine that these percentages are probably even higher now. We've got a lot of macro stressors in our country that we're dealing with and our brains are struggling with. People are stressed out about the future of our nation, about our economy, violence, social justice, and inequality. If you're stressed by these, you are not alone. And it's completely normal. We've got personal stressors that we're dealing with that don't, stay in the car when we drive to work. They come in with us when we're at work. Financial stress. Some of us may not have stable housing. We may be experiencing relationship stress, discrimination or harassment. These are real. And if you're experiencing responses due to these, those responses are real and normal. And then finally, we have workplace stressors that many of us are dealing with as well. High workloads, limited, not enough pay, lack of autonomy in decision-making around what we do on a day-to-day basis and how much of it we do. Maybe we've got inadequate mental health support that we're dealing with. So we've got multiple levels of stressors. Want to acknowledge that and want to let you know that if you're feeling those stressors, you are not alone. So let's figure out some ways of helping ourselves manage that stress and helping each other manage that stress. So just a very quick recap of how stress and trauma affect us. So this is the brain on stress and trauma. We've got stressors and trauma that are coming in. Our brains, a lot of times, process those as real physical threats. We're being chased by a bear or a saber-toothed tiger. That's the fast pathway to our amygdala, which cuts off the pathway temporarily to our prefrontal cortex, where we do all of our executive functioning, thinking, and our brain can just go into these automatic responses, behavioral and mental responses of fight, flight, freeze, or submit, and then also physical responses. If you're experiencing any of these responses, those are normal responses to the abnormal experiences of the amount of stress and trauma that we may be experiencing. So we also talked a little bit about the behavioral responses of fight, flight, freeze, and submit. This may look familiar to you all in terms of lashing out or angry outbursts, flight, struggling to focus, avoiding emotions, people, places, freeze. This is where, the diminished mental processing may come in, and submit, that, whatever attitude or easily giving up. These can be totally normal responses to the overwhelming amount of stress and perhaps trauma that folks are facing. And then we also talked about the physical responses. A lot of cortisol and adrenaline get pumped through our body when we're dealing with stress. That's not normal. That wears down our bodily systems faster and leads to some pretty serious health outcomes. So just a real quick recap of that, but let's turn to the more positive side of things. So what's the brain science of managing stress and building resilience? So let's just break these down. The brain science, we just talked about the brain science of stress and trauma and how they affect us. Now we're going to turn to the brain science of managing that stress and building resilience. Managing stress. We think about this in two ways. Number one, how do we manage ourselves when we're feeling stressed out? So when we feel stress, how do we manage that ourselves, just so that way we can survive through the stress? This is called regulation, and we'll talk about how to do that and some techniques for that. We'll also talk about self-care, which is a big part of the managing stress that's coming at us. But the second and just as important part is, how do we manage the amount and intensity of stress that are coming at us in the first place? And that's where that collective care comes in. That's where we need to be taking care of each other and making sure that we're not experiencing those crazy workloads, making sure that we're not experiencing tasks that we can't handle, things that are too stressful in work. So we'll also talk about that briefly today. So before we get too far into all that, though, we want to make sure we define resilience, because CSW has a special definition of resilience that is not just get over it, just move on. That is not resilience. And please, please don't use that definition of resilience when you're out there talking to folks about this. Rather, we prefer the definition of resilience, which is the ability, capacities, and relationships to manage and overcome adversity. So it's really about our skills. It's about the relationships that we have with each other to both manage and overcome that adversity, which actually requires a lot of healing and processing through the challenges that we're experiencing. It's not just ignoring the challenges, it's actually leaning into them, managing them, and overcoming them. And the cool thing about resilience is it's not binary. It's not you either have it or you don't, but it can be built up over time, and it can be built the more that we support each other. So have that in mind as we're talking about these different regulations, self-care, and collective care strategies. So how do we build resilient workforces, since we just defined resilience? Well, I was kind of thinking about it for this presentation, and it's really a pretty simple formula. regulating our brains and our bodies, getting the brain to calm down and out of that stress response or trauma response, plus supporting both self-care and collective care, making sure that we can manage the adversities, but also supporting each other through those and reducing the adversities, especially in the workplace, equals resilient workforces. So let's unpack this. Let's first talk about regulating the brain and the body. So the most important thing for regulating the brain and the body is to learn to read your body. Understand how various parts of your body feel when you react and react when you are stressed. And you can also think about it a different way if that question doesn't resonate with you. How does stress affect your body? So for example, this little poster shows, if you're stressed out, your eyes might dilate and see more, your mouth might become dry, you might start to breathe faster and have more shallow breathing. If you remember the brain science, all of this is set up to help us fight the threat or run away from the threat or hide from the threat. So it's starting to make sense when you understand the brain science, how stress affects our bodies. Your stomach may start to churn if you're stressed out. You may experience more blood pressure and a flushed face and a warm face. So we're all designed differently. So read your body when you're stressed out. Try to understand how it's reacting. So for example, when I get stressed, I become alert at first, very extremely alert, hyper alert, actually. It's kind of weird. My mind starts racing and I can get a ton of stuff done in a very short amount of time. It was really useful when I worked in Washington, D.C. and had a lot coming at me. I feel good because the adrenaline is pumping and I'm getting a lot of stuff done. However, if I am too stressed, these are the signs that I look for to know that I need to slow things down. One is my left eye starts to twitch. And that's really happened with the chemotherapy that I had. If you remember, I've got breast cancer, but we've got it under control. So don't worry about me. But my left eye starts to twitch. And when that happens, I know, oh boy, I need to slow things down. The other thing that happens is my brain starts glitching. Like it just doesn't think straight. It'll have some bumps and gaps in the road. And that really interferes with my processing of things that I need to read or think about or talk about. So I'm not really stressed out now because I think I'm being pretty coherent. But if that starts happening, I know I need to slow down. I need to step back from the stressors. I also get grumpy, which my husband reminds me of. And the other thing is I lose my filters. So I start to say things that probably shouldn't be said. And so when I start to say something like, oh, well, maybe you shouldn't do that. I know that I'm stressed out. I've learned to read those signs. They're very specific to me. And I step back from work. I do some breathing, meditation, mindfulness. I take a break for the day. I go for a walk to get that stress level down. So that's your homework for today, is to read your own body, write down your own stressors, and keep an eye out for them and have a game plan for when they happen. Here's another little tool that might be helpful for you. This is created by Dr. Bruce Perry of Kintla. Kintla is an organization that works with companies to help them understand and calibrate behaviors and emotions across the workplace. But you can kind of see where you are at. What's your number right now for how you feel? So are you sort of disengaged, tired, distracted, kind of in that gray zone? Are you in the green zone where you're alert, you're present, you're ready to go? Or are you on that red zone where you're anxious, frustrated, alarmed, afraid, kind of feeling reactive? So this is a nice little tool to help you start to read your body and understand where you're at when it comes to stressors. It's actually a great tool for teams to use. So at the start of a team meeting, you can show this and ask folks to, if they want, just invite them, don't force them, to identify where they're at on this regulation curve. And it can help teammates interact with each other better. If somebody knows that somebody is sort of on the alarm side of things, then maybe they will present information in a softer way, a calmer way, so as not to, further trigger that red zone. Or if everybody's in the green zone, you know that you can really rock and roll in that meeting. So when you get the access to the slides, you can print this slide off and use this tool for yourself and with your colleagues. So this is a very busy, packed slide, but it really has a lot of great strategies for how to do that regulation that I talked about, how to get the brain and the body calmed down so we can manage stress and survive through it. So there's lots of tips for self-regulation. Co-regulation is with your colleagues or with your family members or with your friends. And then there's 3 different kind of buckets of regulation strategies. You can have sensory regulation, where you're really sending safe signals to each other. So you're not really thinking about it, but it's more kind of emotional. Cognitive regulation is in the brain, and we're engaging in thinking and redefining that stress. A lot of redefining stress is around our mindsets to, again, just get us to be able to survive the stress. And then we've got social regulation, which is how we engage with others, very relational. So for example, sensory regulation, self-regulation, these are the things like breathing exercises where you kind of hack into your brain, slow down your breath, which slows down the amygdala, slows down the heart rate, and gets your body and brain out of emergency mode. Others kind of techniques in this category include taking that quick walk. Again, that calms the mind down, engaging in mindfulness, which helps our bodies to realize, we're not in danger. We're just sitting at an office desk. It's not that big of a deal. Self-regulation strategies that are more in the cognitive realm and kind of that middle set of buckets. Just naming the emotion. So we just did some of that with the regulation curve. Are you feeling alarmed? Are you feeling bored? Or are you feeling, ready to go and present and alert? And then also the slide before that, when we were looking through our bodies and how stress affects us. So just naming it goes a long way. Shifting that negative self-talk. Don't allow yourself to get into a negative spiral of, I'm stressed out, I can't do this, I'm not good enough. Recognize that and stop it. Practicing gratitude is another kind of cognitive hack because when you recognize gratitude, it actually releases some of the positive hormones in your body, and that helps to counter things. So there's a bunch on here. I'm not going to go through every single example, but just wanted to let you have this framework around, how do we regulate ourselves? What are things that we can do with our colleagues, which are very similar to self-regulation techniques, and then the different kinds. Okay, there we go. One of the best ones and the easiest and quickest to do is just acknowledging the power in your breath. And this is called a 4-count breathing pattern. The US military actually uses this to help military members regulate their breathing, calm their mind down so they can engage in clear thinking when they're in the field. And basically, you kind of see how this box is moving around. You breathe in for 4 seconds. And then you hold that breath for 4 seconds. This is box breathing. Breathe out for 4 seconds and hold for 4 seconds. And you do that 3 or 4 times, and that actually really does calm your brain. If this one doesn't work for you, sometimes the holds kind of mess people up. You can just breathe in for 6 or 8 seconds and then breathe out for 6 or 8 seconds. A little trick is when you're breathing in, you are activating your nervous system. So if you need to get energy for something, either a performance or a presentation, make that in-breath longer than the out-breath, because when you breathe out, you're actually calming down your system. So when you need to calm things down, if you're feeling stressed, breathe in for like 6 seconds and then breathe out for 8 or 10 seconds. Okay, so that's a little trick that really works well. So people also talk about mindfulness. So what exactly is mindfulness? It's another regulation technique. It's an intentional awareness to the present moment, your body, and the physical space that you're in without any judgment or reaction. So this is a special skill that takes practice for folks. Here's two examples just to give you some concrete ways of thinking about this. Again, super easy techniques that will calm your brain down when you're in the middle of a very stressful situation. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise where you just sit at your desk, observe 5 things that you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can feel, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. And I'm going to go ahead and take a sip of my tea right now and do that one thing. That little exercise, again, will regulate your nervous system and help you get through the stressor and also protect your body from the negative physical effects of stress. There's another really simple technique that you can use called color focus, where if you sit at your desk, think of a color, and you can do it right now. Think of a color. Now look around you and name all the things that you can see are that color. So obviously green is my color. Look at my walls, my plants, my planters, and you can, really remind your body that we're not being chased by a dangerous thing right now. We are just in this office enjoying our favorite colors, and it goes a long way to regulating that stress. So those are a couple of activities. There's a million online. If those don't resonate with you, find one that does. So the other part of the formula is supporting self and collective care. What does this mean? Well, the easiest tool that we've found for self-care is the Olga Phoenix Self-Care Wheel. And that QR code will go to Olga's website and you can see the self-care wheel and look at it more closely. But the two important parts of this are, one, I encourage you to try to fill this out. And on the next slide, we have a blank wheel with a QR code to the blank wheel. There are examples of different things that you can engage in for self-care on this. So you don't need to have whatever this is, 15 different self-care techniques in each of these categories. Pick 1 or 2 that work. The other important point is you want to have a diverse portfolio of self-care techniques, because if one of your self-care techniques is physical, going out for a walk, if it's raining outside or there's a snowstorm and you're stressed out, you're probably not going to go out for that walk. And so you need to have a different self-care technique in order to deal with that stress in the moment. So it's good to try to have 3 or 4 at least. If you can have 1 in each bucket, that's even better. And then here's the link, the slide with the link to the blank self-care wheel. I'll leave this up for just a moment because I know sometimes it takes folks a little bit to get their phones out. But we are really appreciative of Olga Phoenix for making these things available. We do this on our team. So we have completed together the self-care wheel. We share it with each other. And so I check in with my team members. And this is part of collective care. We're starting to move into collective care here. So I know what each team member's self-care techniques are, and I can check in with them and say, hey, Trish, have you scheduled that massage? And by the time we meet next week, I want you to have scheduled that massage because that's an important part of your self-care strategy. And by the way, I don't just care about you. I need you to be a productive team member. And the more, you engage in the self-care that works for you, the more productive you are as a team member. So what's collective care? This is just seeing members' well-being, particularly their emotional health, as a shared responsibility of the group rather than the lone task of an individual. And there's kind of 2 directions to think about collective care. One is from the bottom up, which is just members caring about each other, checking in with each other, encouraging self-care, offering to help with somebody's workload if a colleague is overbooked, noticing when a colleague seems to be sad or they're feeling stressed, and just taking a minute to check in with them. Acknowledgement goes a long way to helping people manage their stress. And then there's top-down strategies, and this is more about the organizational policies, procedures, culture that encourages self-care and reduces the stressors at work. So mental health coverage, parity, employee assistance programs, leadership, that's a typo, modeling, taking real vacation and sick days and not working on your vacation and sick days, leadership talking about mental health and sharing articles and resources for mental health, organizing times for team members to get out and support each other as human beings, et cetera. There's a lot of ideas. I unfortunately don't have a whole lot of time to cover too many more, but you get the drift, I think. So why do we need to engage in collective care as well as individual self-care? Well, first of all, a little cute thing, there's a me in team. So if we're taking care of the team, we're also taking care of me as well. So you can see when we're engaging in collective care, we're automatically engaging in self-care as well. The other big reason, though, that's not such a cutesy thing is self-care is not a remedy for the organizational systemic issues that we have. And so if you've got a toxic workplace, you can engage in all the self-care you want. It's still going to stress you out, probably, because the system is broken. And the only way we're going to fix that broken system is through collective care, working together and help and supporting each other. And also self-care builds personal resilience. Collective care builds organizational resilience. So if you want to have a resilient organization, collective care has to be part of the strategy. So that was super fast. I can't believe we made it through in a little over 20 minutes. Just wanted to advertise for you episode 3, which will be on March 19th. That is cultivating workplace cultures that are trauma-informed and reduce toxic stress. And we're going to be talking about a specific tool and set of principles that we use at CSW to help organizations do this, as well as a process for how you can use that tool to help get to a healthier workplace culture. So that's it. Oh, and then also there's some additional tools that I'm not going to go through, but once you access the slide deck, you can see those. All right, Sean, back to you.
I love it, Vicki. As you know, I love talking about stress, the brain science of stress, because for everybody that's with us today and everybody that'll watch this later, we're all wired the same way when this happens. There's no getting around this. I had a couple of questions that kind of came up is that, it seems that because of all the stressors that you kind of highlighted, there's a number of us that just kind of get used to carrying stress. And one thing I like about the regulation curve is that it shows you that some stress is positive, but for many of us, it's just too much. So will these kind of efforts help us if we just kind of got in the flow of carrying a whole lot of stress?
So, and there's kind of two things that happen when we're so used to stress and it feels like we're just kind of getting used to it. One is that could be legitimate. Maybe you have innately figured out how to manage the stress and you're not letting it get to you and it's not affecting your brain or body in a negative way. I mean, that's totally possible, especially for well-regulated people. But the other thing is it may be masking. So you may think that you are handling the stress really well, but actually it's just being bottled up and you are still getting the negative reactions of the mental and physical effects of stress affecting you. And so that's why we talk about the regulation. Well, first of all, that's why we talk about read your body. So even if you think you're handling the stressors well, I still encourage you to read your body and see what's going on and maybe even ask other people how you respond in stressful situations, because you may not be seeing some things. You have some blind spots possibly. And then the second thing is that regulation to really, make sure that your body is not automatically having those stress response without you knowing about it. Use those regulation techniques to really work that stress out rather than just bottle it in. And then, the more we think about and engage in self-care and collective care, the more we get honest about how stress may be affecting us and what we need to do to mitigate it.
Yeah. Another one, as you help me learn, sort of the stress response is intended to sort of shut off once I get away from the bear, right? So, in a world like we live in, the workplace, when we're talking stress, it can come from anywhere. Uh, the world we live in, caregiving, all these kind of things, just carrying the stress with you. How do we manage that in a world where we can't escape the proverbial bear because it's there all of the time?
Right. Well, sometimes you do, psychologists don't like this, but sometimes you do have to box things off. So when you have stressors coming at you that you can't stop, um, like the news or social media is a good example. Just, turn it off, put it in a box. It'll still be there for you if you want to check it out when you're in a less stressed place. So, kind of compartmentalizing some of the stressful areas of our life. And that's kind of in the mindset set of strategies. The other thing is we really need to be relying on each other more to help support each other. So when you've got a child care crisis, stop trying to be the cowboy who, doesn't ask anybody for help and takes everything on and solves their own problems. Ask people for help. People love to help, actually. Think about it, when you help somebody else, that gives you a little endorphin hit. Give that opportunity to other people. And that's one thing I've learned with this whole breast cancer journey. People love to help. I've been giving them all kinds of opportunities to help, and I realize I've got some really good cooks among my friend circle.
Yeah,
So
nice.
that's another technique. Ask and receive for help, and give it yourself.
Yeah, and that one little note I made on the collective care for a bullet is give people grace, because
Totally.
we're all going through this, and the reactions that they could be having could be sort of emotional or stress related or whatever else, and you might see behaviors that maybe aren't normal or maybe are abnormal for that person. Like give them the benefit of the doubt because they're probably in the same spot that we're all going to be in at some point. So it's always good to do that. Well, we're
Yep.
right at time. We're actually just 1 minute over. We have one more of these where we're going to focus on the organizational piece. I think Vicki really highlighted something we've been talking about all the way through is there's certainly a personal part of this, but there's also a system part of this. So we're trying to put those things together. I thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next month.